Hello everybody and welcome back, and right now we are slowly entering our footprinting section, which will be the last part of the beginner section, including the scanning section that we will do right after we cover the footprinting. Well, before we begin, while our machine is starting up, let us just explain a little bit more what footprinting is. So, first of all, there are two types of footprinting. One is active and one is passive. Now, the active footprinting basically requires some interaction with the target that you're trying to attack, while the passive footprinting is basically just gathering all of the public available information for your target. So, for example, if your target has a Facebook account, a Twitter, or basically any other account or any other source of information from which you can gather some of the valuable stuff you might need. Now let's say, for example, your target is a company, and as a public information online you have that company, for example, uses Windows XP on their machines. You can already cut out the Linux exploits and Windows 10 or 7 exploits, and you can basically just focus on writing a Windows XP exploit. Now, we all know that nobody really uses XP anymore because it is vulnerable and it is basically an open box. But that was just an example. There are lots of public information which you can find. Oh, sorry, there was a cut in my recording. So basically what I was going to say is, let's go to some of the practical methods with Google hacking. We'll cover Google hacking in this tutorial, so let me just log in, test 1, 2, 3, 4. And as soon as this machine boots up, as soon as my desktop boots up, we will open Firefox and we will run some of the specific commands in the Google search bar in order to find some of the stuff we might need. Now, this is just one of the tools for footprinting that we will cover, and basically the other ones, which will be, for example, Harvester, Nikto, Shodan, and Whois, we will cover in the next lectures. But for now on, let us just open our Firefox. So just click on your Firefox icon, and basically, since it will lead you to your Kali Linux website, you want to navigate to Google, so just type here the google.com. I'm just waiting for my Firefox to open. It is taking a little bit of time. Here we go. It is basically opening right now, so we can just leave here. We can add another tab and go onto google.com. Okay, it finally opened. Now let's say, for example, that you want to find all of the websites that have a user input that could possibly be vulnerable to the SQL injection, for example. So you just, on Google search bar, you just type here in URL, then the 2 dots, space, then the apostrophe, then index.php question mark, and then ID equals. I just find equals on my keyboard. Here we go, and then apostrophe once again. Now what this will do is it will find all the websites that end in the index.php question mark ID equals and then some number. Now what does that mean? Well, basically, if we click on any of these, let me just check right here, your connection is not secure. Go back, let's go check another one. I'm not sure why it says that. Well, I have an idea, but here we go. So basically, as you can see right here, this website could possibly be vulnerable to the SQL injection. We can check that easily with the apostrophe, and if we try to log in, login failed due to incorrect email address, wrong passphrase. So basically this site isn't vulnerable, at least at the first try. But we won't try it anymore since we shouldn't really do that. Basically I just want to show you how to filter out all of the websites that actually have a user input which could be vulnerable to the SQL injection. So basically anywhere where you can type something and then the website page can process it could be vulnerable to the user input, which could be a piece of code that you would trick the server to run for you. So, but more about that in the website hacking section. Now, that was just one of the commands. Let me just go on Google once again. I don't know why I closed it. In order to find the commands you might need, there is a Google hacking database, which basically you just type here in Google hacking database. And you click here on the first link and it will lead us to a website with a bunch of the commands we use in order to find out the things we might need. For example, passwords or PDF files or Excel files or anything. So let's just wait for this to open. Here it is. And as you can see, it says right here, it is the exploit database website. The Google hacking database. These are just a bunch of the commands which you just copy and paste into Google search bar and it will list you all the files you are searching. I'm not really sure what these commands are. It says right here, if we click on the one, it will lead us to the command which is this one. Now, I can only guess what this does, but we can read it. Description: dork for finding login portals were well-known company websites hosted on famous hosting providers such as all of these. Basically, so this command does that. We can try it out if we want to. It's not really that useful for us, but why not? So you just copy the command. You can do it from here or you can just copy it from here. It was the first one, so we will just copy and paste it. And we will see how it works. So here we are. They are all basically account login. As we can see, account login, my account login, my account login. So it filters out all of the websites which have a directory which is /myaccount_login. Now let's see, for example, another one. These are, as you can see, listed with a date. So this one was yesterday. We can go, let's go off on this one, entitled index of SSH. Now, you can read right here that data you find web servers version, SSH version, SSH keys, SSH logins, and SSH.exe files. As it says right here, I found a lot of servers using SSH 1.4. They are usually +5 years old and full of security holes. A search in exploit database for SSH1 turns up +40,000 exploits for these. Some may work. So this could be a useful command for us. We can copy it and see what we find with it. We won't be attacking any of these since we don't have permission, but it sure could be useful later on. As you can see, we will not mess with this right now. What we want to do is only use these commands, and we will cover hacking of websites later on, but not on these websites, but on the websites that we do own, which we will make in our own virtual environment. So you need to use these commands only. You can basically, if you want to search for the example PDF files, you can type here quick search PDF and it will show you the PDF, I believe. Let's see how to find a PDF file, email delivery. We do not want that. In text, please find attached login password. Let's see, this could be a PDF file that could contain a password. I'm not sure if I can do it like this. I can. So as you can see right here, these all files are PDF files. You can see right here, all of this is a PDF. Let's see, if we open one, it will ask us to save these files. We do not want to save it. Basically, this is just all of the PDF files available on the internet. Let us just see the more accurate explanation of this command. Passwords and information on targets, employees, customers, awesome for spear phishing. Replace PDF extension with any other document extension like doc, docx, text, txt. Okay. So that was PDF. You can use any of these commands. If you want to know what it does, you just click on the command, and this one really doesn't have any explanation. Let's just check out another one. As you can see, this command, which is pretty huge, will help you to find out videos published in Google Drives. So example, yeah, okay, so PDF, MP4, okay, so bunch of file extensions for videos. I'm not really sure why PDF is there, but there is possibly a reason for that. So let's say now, for example, we do not want a PDF file, we want Excel file. We just type here. Wait, how do you type Excel? I'm not really sure. Is there an H in there? Let's just check out real fast. Yeah, it's just Excel, so let's see once again. No matching records found. Show 50, show... Okay, so let me just try it like this. Now we set here on 120 commands, so let me just check this out. .xls I'm finding in order to find an Excel file. But it doesn't really matter, so here we are. There is an XLS file, which is an Excel file. And basically if you click there, we can see what else it will find: a mix of login, portals and passwords. But this is a huge command. We will not use it right now. So that's all I wanted to show you. As you can see, they basically explain for every command what it does, such as for example this one or this one, admin dashboard. If we click on it, you can see the explanation, which is basically just a lot of login portals, and it could be useful if you, for example, wanted to find some of the vulnerable sites to the specific attacks, like we showed in the first command, or in the first string that we typed into the Google, which was that index.php $ID equals, which would lead us to all of the websites with user input that could be possibly vulnerable to SQL injection. So that's about it for the Google hacking. Now, if you want to, you can scroll down and check out all of these other commands. They could be useful for you, but we won't be doing that since there are lots of them. And we'll continue footprinting in the next lecture. So I hope I see you there, and take care. Bye. Hello everybody and welcome back. And now in this lecture we will cover our second tool for the footprinting, which is called Nikto. Now, Nikto can also be used for the web penetration testing, which basically it scans for the website and it prints out if there is any possible vulnerability on the website, or if there is any outdated version. For example, the Apache 2 could be outdated and the Nikto will show us that. Now, this can be put into the active interaction, since we are scanning the website and you should not be doing that on a website you do not own. So I'll just scan the website that I put out on my laptop. Well, not a website, web server. It is Apache web server, and it doesn't really have anything on it, but it's running currently, so we should be able to see the IP address and the version of the Apache, and also maybe some of the errors it could possibly have. So let me just enlarge this a little bit. Now, in order to run Nikto, you basically just type here Nikto. It will show you the usage of the command. Now, these are some of the basic options that you can see right here. If we wanted to, we could print the extended version. I believe it is help, as it says right here. Yeah, this will be the extended version of the Nikto help command. And we can see there are a bunch of the options right here for this program. Now, we won't be covering all of these, since that will take a lot of time, but we will cover some. Basically, the most important one would be the, let me just find it, the host, here it is, target host. So in order for you to scan a website, you need to provide a target host. Now that target host can be either a domain name or basically a IP address. Now in my case I will use my IP address since my laptop is on my local network and its IP address is 192.168.1.15. Now if you have any available website or any other virtual machine, you can test it on that one and you can check out if your local website is vulnerable to something or possibly could be vulnerable to something. Now let me just show you. Let's type here Nikto, and basically we'll specify first of H for the host and then 192.168.1.15. Now this should print out some of the errors it might find, such as here we have the anti-click checking X-frame options header is not present. The XSS protection header is not defined. Now this could be a problem. It is opening us to a cross-site scripting attack, but it also could be just a false alarm. See, here we can see the allowed HTTP methods on the Apache website, which is get, head, post, and options, and this will take a few seconds to finish. Basically, if it takes a lot of time, we will just close it, so I can show you some of the other options that Nikto has. Here we have login.php, admin login page section found. Portions of this server's headers are not in the Nikto database or are newer than the known string. Okay, would you like to submit this information? We do not want to submit any right now. Now you might be asking, what kind of login page am I hosting on my laptop? Well, basically I just have a fake Instagram page right there. I just made it, so if we type my laptop's IP address, let me just open this up, it will lead us to a fake Instagram page. As you can see right here, it is not a real Instagram, it is basically just my IP address, which we will use for some of the attacks later on. But for now on, we will just use the Nikto in order to scan this page. And as we can see, it has finished. It printed out a bunch of the options which could be useful or not for you, depending of the website and depending of the errors. But let's check out some of the other examples of this command. So let me just type here H, and we can see the help command once again. We can see our options, the config, display, format, host, evasion, encoding technique. For example, you can use the evasion. I believe it is tagged as a -e in the command. We can use the -e, then specify any of these numbers if we want to. For example, fake parameter, directory self-reference, or any other. We can, right here, we will use number 1, random encoding, non-UTF-8, okay. So we will basically run the same command, but we will add, let's add before that. Now I believe that this will print out the same output, so we are not really interested right now in waiting for this to finish. So one more thing I want to show you is that you can specify a port on which you want to scan. Now most likely that port will always be port 80, so it is not really needed, but in case you want to, for example, scan on port 443, which is the HTTPS usual port, you can change that with the -p option. As we can see, default is 80, so you would just type here Nikto and then the host, which in my case is 192.168.1.15, and then you specify a port and type here 80 or 443 or any other port you want, but most likely it will be one of those two. Now let's say, for example, we want to scan port 80, since my Apache web server is running on port 80 on my laptop, and we want to save that into a file. Now how we do that? With the -o command. Let me just check here if it really is -o. I'm not seeing it right here. I believe it is. Yes, it is output, so we'll just type here -o -o, and we will name a file. Basically, we can name it anything you want. We will name it right here, result. And you also need to specify the file type, which I believe is the capital F, which is format, save file, format. Okay, so format, we will just type here basic txt. We want to save it into a txt file. And we can run the same command once again. And basically right here, once it finishes, we will have a file with all of this stuff written to it, so you don't have to write it manually. The output option can be used if you need to provide to someone the scan results, so you can just put that into any file type. I just decided it to be txt for this example, and you can just send the file to someone. Now let's just wait for this to finish so we can check out our file. Here it asks us again if we want to report something to the website, I believe. Let me just read once again. Not in Nikto database or anywhere. Would you like to submit this information? No, we do not want to. So now if we type ls, I should have a result file, as we can see right here. Now if we nano the result file, let's just cat it, result, we should see all of our output right there. As we can see, target hostname, target port is right here, and there are some of the... I'm not really sure why it didn't put all of them in here, or maybe it did, I just can't see them. But that's the example of writing a Nikto output into a file. Now, if you want to run Nikto, we'll just delete this file for now. If you want to run Nikto, you can see that there is an option to run it over a proxy. As you can see, use proxy, and use the proxy defined in the nikto.conf file. Now, in order for you to do this, you need to link in that file any proxy you want, basically. If you have one, I will show you how to put it there. I don't really have one at the moment. We will cover proxy and VPN later on, but for now on, let me just locate the nikto.conf file. We covered this command, so you just type here locate and then the name of the file, and it will show us all of the files that are named like this and where are they stored. Now we are interested in the first one, which is in the @c, and if we nano to the nikto.conf file, we can see a bunch of options right here. Let us navigate and find the proxy option. Let me just check where it is. Here we go. Proxy settings still must be enabled by use proxy. So basically, if you wanted to use proxy in the Nikto program, you would specify use proxy in the command, and here you would specify the proxy and the proxy host and the proxy port. So if you had a proxy, you would specify the proxy IP address right here, which for me is just localhost at the moment, and here you would specify the port. And also one more thing you would need to do is remove the hash in order for this to be configured. And after that you would just type Ctrl-O, save, enter, Ctrl-X to exit, and then you could use your proxy in a Nikto. But since I don't really need it at the moment, I will just put the hash back so we don't use it, and I will say once again. So basically just remember that the file is located in the @c. You can also find it with the locate command. So that would be about it for the Nikto program. If you want to, you can check other options as well. I don't find them useful at the moment, but if you want, you could check out all of the other options. And we will continue in the next lecture with the Whois program. And I hope I see you there, and take care. Hello everybody and welcome back, and in this lecture we will cover one more footprinting tool, which is basically called Whois. Now the Whois is an important footprinting tool because it basically gives us a bunch of information about a website that we scanned. Now the information can be used for multiple further attacks, since the information that we get from the website, from the Whois command or program, is basically who registered the website, where is it registered, which date does the registration expires. We get a bunch of addresses, telephone numbers, email addresses, and bunch of the other options. So let us just type here just the Whois. It is pre-installed in the Kali Linux, so you don't need to install it, you will have it already there. And as we can see, what the usage is Whois, then the option, then the object. These are a bunch of the options that you have. We will not cover them, we will just basically scan the site with the host option. So we will just type here, let's scan a big site, for example, so that we can get a bunch of the information. So cnn.com, if you type here Whois cnn.com, it should print out a bunch of the publicly available information about that website. Let us just wait for this to finish, it shouldn't take too long. Here we go. Now the first thing we see right here is that the notice one, which says you're not authorized to access or query our Whois database through the use of high volume automated electronic processes or for the purpose or purposes of using data in any manner that violates these terms of use. So basically this is not illegal. You can see right here, by submitting a Whois query you agree to abide by the following terms of use. You agree that you may use this data only for lawful purposes. So basically you shouldn't be using any of these data for any of the attacks that we will cover if you do not have permission to do so. We will just check out the data, we will not use it for any further attacks. So let us just see what we got from this command. As you can see, the first thing we have here is the domain name that we typed, cnn.com. The registry domain ID, we can see that the registry Whois server is this one. Now most of these commands do not really interest us. We can see this could be possibly interesting for us, which is the name server. It could be useful for some of the DNS attacks. But until then we will just check out all of these options. Let me just see if there is anything interesting right here. Register abuse contact email. We can see an email right here. Contact phone, registry expiry date, so we can see when does it expire, creation date, updated date. Let us go a little bit down here, terms of use, okay, registry domain ID. This is basically all that we seen already. So here are some of the publicly available information. As you can see, the registrant email tmgroup@turner.com. So for example, if you were an attacker and you were hired to test a company and you test their website like this and you get a bunch of these emails, you can use them for some of the further attacks, such as malware sending. You can send a malware, for example, from this email. And this is just a hypothetical example. It can be used for some of the further attacks, such as sending malware to this email and hopefully waiting for someone to open it. Then you will have a backdoor installed on the inside of the company. So here we can see more of the publicly available options, such as the registered city, state, postal code, country, bunch of the other mobile phones, emails, as we said. Here down here, let me just see. Another email right here, and the name server. As we can see, this can be useful. Let me just check if that is that. So basically you use this command in order to gather more information about the company. It surely can provide some of the information you might need. So in order to, for example, save this to a file, as we did in the previous command, in the previous lecture with Nikto, let me just see if it has an option to save to a file. I'm not sure if it does, but if it doesn't, you can do that with simply, let me just clear the screen. Let me go to the root directory. So we're in the root directory. You can just type here the same command and you can type the arrow into result.txt. Now it won't print out anything here, I believe, and it will print all of the output into the result.txt file. So when this finishes, we should have a file with all of these things written to it. As you can see, we didn't get any output, but if we click here ls, if we type here ls, we can see the result.txt. Let's get that file, and we should have all of our information available in that file now. So you can send it to someone if you want to, or you can just have it so you don't have to type the command every time in order to check something out. Now, since I don't need that file, I will just delete it, and that's basically it for this program. You will find it useful sometimes and sometimes not, but in the next lecture we will cover the email harvesting, which we will use a program called Harvester. I'm not really sure if it's installed. Yeah, I'm sure, yeah, it is installed in the Kali Linux, so we will cover it in the next lecture. And until then, you can practice these two programs that we covered for now on, including the Google hacking and Nikto, and you can also practice with the Whois program to find as much information as you can. Now this is it for this lecture, and I hope I see you in the next tutorial. Bye. Hello everybody and welcome back, and in this tutorial we will cover the email harvesting tool, which is called basically the Harvester. So in the last tutorial I checked out if we have it installed already, and we do, so we'll just locate it and we will run it, because I already tried to run it from here, Harvester, and it just doesn't work. So let's just locate it first. And we can see that it is stored in this directory, user share goes mirror tools. So we will just go to that directory, and we can see here a bunch of programs, well not a bunch of, a few programs, and we will change our directory to the Harvester. So if we type here change directory Harvester, we can see that right here we have an executable file, Python file, which we will run in order to run this program. Now let me just enlarge this program, and I just want to tell you that this program basically doesn't work from time to time. So for example, once I run it, it might print us the emails, and it might not, because I run this a bunch of times on the same website, and it sometimes just finds a lot of things and sometimes it just doesn't find anything. So if we just run this program, it will show us an error, and it will say the domain search is mandatory. So we basically need to specify our domain website. So let me just type here the help option, which is the harvester-help, and it will show us our available options. Here we can see that the -d is basically specifying the domain or company name to search for. The -b is engine, so it will basically the search engine, so it will by default be Google, as it says right here, and we want to leave it on that since I believe Google is the best. And here we can have the -l, which is also an important option, which stands for limit. It will limit the number of results to work with. So basically if you just type here the 200, it will search for the first 200 results, and it will show us the emails and hosts from those 200. Now we can try these examples right here. So we will just copy the first one. Let's just use -d microsoft.com, -l for the results number, which we will set to 500, and -b in order for it to be Google. So let's just try this. It will take a few seconds. It might find something and it might not. Basically, if it doesn't find anything, you can try using the same command later on and it will probably work. It just decides from time to time when it will find and when it will not. So if it doesn't work, we won't really care much about it. We will just continue on with the tutorials, and you can try it later out with the same command. So here we go, it is soon going to finish it, but in this case we just weren't able to find anything. So let me just try here another website, or basically what if we just type Microsoft without .com. Maybe it will search it as a company name and it might find some of the results. We will give it one more try after it if it doesn't find anything here. and we will finish the tutorial there, since there is no point. As I said, sometimes this tool finds something and sometimes it just doesn't want to find anything. So we will wait for this to finish. First 200 results are already over. No, this one didn't work as well. So let me just try out one website that worked 20 minutes ago when I tried it. This is a website from my country, basically some university website. It doesn't even matter, you can try this on any website you want. Maybe if we use the other website, maybe it will print us something. If it doesn't, we will just proceed to the next tutorial, which will be shodan. It is basically a search engine, basically a website that we use to search for the vulnerable devices. Now you will be surprised to how many vulnerable devices are there out on the internet. The most common vulnerable devices are basically the routers with the default username and passwords. And if you were to go on to the login page of that IP address, you would be able to enter their router and change all of their settings. But more about that in the next tutorial. As we can see, this one didn't work either. So 3 times we tried and it didn't work any of those 3. So basically later on, or tomorrow or whenever you want, you can just try the command out once again and it will probably work. It just doesn't want to work right now. So once again, it is located in this directory. You won't be able to run it from the terminal, from any directory. If you want to, I will show you in next tutorials how to move a file and be able to run it from any directory with just its name. So for example, I will show you how to run this file with just its name and not going to this directory all the time when you want to use it. But we will teach that in some of the other tutorials, and for now on I will cut the tutorial short here and I hope I see you in the next one. Hello everybody, welcome back, and in this tutorial, as I said, we will cover the shodan, but before we go on to the shodan, I just want to show you the harvester from the previous lecture, which we couldn't get to work. Maybe if we try it right now. Let me just locate it once again. So we will go user, share, go with Marrow tools, and then the harvester. Now I won't cover right now how to use harvester, since we did that in the previous tutorial, but I will just try to run it once again so we can see if it will work now. Now let me just type here the harvester, and as a domain we will use the same website we tried on in the previous video, which is this one. For the -l command we will list 500 results. Oops. And for the -b command we want to search over the Google engine. So if we just enter right here, we will just wait a few seconds until it searches Google, and we will see if right now we get some of the results that we couldn't get in the previous video. And as we can see, it will finish soon. It processed 400 results, and here we go. As you can see, the same website that in the previous lecture didn't work right now gave us some of the information. For example, we found a bunch of email addresses that belong to that domain, as you can see right here. We also found some of the hosts with their IP addresses that also belong to that domain. You can see portal, all-inclusive, and we found some of the email addresses that, if this was a company that we were testing, we could use in order to process with our attacks. For example, we could send malware to all of these email addresses and hope that some of them will open it. But I just wanted to show you that it works sometimes, so let us just proceed on to the shodan, which is a website. So just open up your Firefox. So just open up a new tab and type here shodan. We will click on the first link and it will lead us to the website where we can discover some of the vulnerable devices on the internet. As we can see, this website right here, explore the Internet of Things, monitor network security, and a bunch of other things. So we are on this website right now, and basically let us just search for some of the vulnerable devices. So in the search bar I will just type here password, and as you can see we got 2 million results right here. We got some of the IP addresses. Let me just type here default password, so maybe it will show us the results of the IP addresses that have their routers configured with the default password. As we can see, this one right here, default name admin, password 1234, but it is unauthorized, so let us just go down here. This IP address right here, enable telnet SSH, username is admin and password is password. So if we click on this IP address, and it will open some of its information, let us just copy the IP address. We'll copy right here and paste it in Google. Now there is a good chance that this won't work. Let me just, before I type here the username and password, let me just check here. What was it? I believe admin and password was username. Yeah, let's try with admin and password. Let me just refresh this and type here admin, and as a password, password. Now let me type it once again, password. Yeah, sometimes it just won't work since these could be updated, so they are not really vulnerable anymore, so someone could have changed the username and password, and right now we can't log in anymore to it. So let me just find another one. As we can see, this one, username Cisco with the password Cisco. The default username, let us just click on this one for now. The default username and password have a privilege level of 15. Please change the publicly known initial credential using here the Cisco iOS command. So basically, if this one didn't change, we should be able to log in with the default username and password. So let me just paste it right here, and we are unable to connect right here. Well, it doesn't really matter. Even if you could possibly connect to someone and they didn't update it and they still have the default username and password, you shouldn't really do anything with it, since it is illegal to change other people's settings on their router. That's why people get notified here about their vulnerabilities, and they can just type here. Let me just show you how you can check yourself out. So just type here, what is my IP address? Basically just copy your public IP address right here, as it says, your public IP address, and paste it in the search bar, and if it finds something, basically it means that your device or your router is vulnerable to something. In my case it didn't find anything, since it is not really vulnerable, but in your case it might find something. Before we finish this tutorial, I just want to show you, for example, if you found out that your own IP address is stored on shodan, that means that it has some kind of vulnerability. So in order for you to change that, for example, if it has a default password and username vulnerability, you will need to update your username and password in the router. So in order to find out what your router IP address is, you can just type here netstat -r, and the IP address that is located below the gateway is the router's IP address. So you can just copy it and go onto the Firefox. Let's open a new tab. And right here you paste the IP address and it will ask you for your username and password. So you just type here your username and password, whatever it is. If you do not know, basically just search the name of your router on the internet and it will show you the default username and password that you get in the configuration of the router. So if you didn't change it, the username and the password will be the same. So you can find the default username and password for any router on the internet. We do not want to save the username and password, so now we wait for it to log in. Let me just show you. For example, you can just type here on Google default router passwords, and you can just go to any website basically and just search your model of your router and find out what their default IP address is and also what their default password is. Now most likely it will be something like admin admin or admin password, but it could also be something else. Now this is the site I didn't visit before, so let me just check out, is there anything available here? So here you can basically just paste the name of your router and it will, let me just try with this one. So for example, let's say this was your router and you find out what the name of your router is, you just paste it right here and it will find the router you're searching for. It will also give you its IP address by default and the default username and password for that router. So once you find that out, you can just paste the IP address right here and it will log in. Now for me it is for some reason loading for too long. Let me just type here once again and here we are logged in. Now it didn't ask me for a username and password because I typed it 2 minutes ago. So now we are in my router. Here you can have a bunch of the informations. Now depending on your router, different settings will be on different places. It won't be the same as mine router. My router is an old one, so it will probably not look even nearly the same as mine does. So you just want to play with the settings a little bit and click on a bunch of things until you find the username and password changing section, where basically you can change your default password into any password you want. So once you do that, nobody will be able to log into your router anymore with the default username and password. It is really important for you to do that, because if someone logs in, it can change any of the settings for the router. It can change the, for example, port forwarding, it can change your wireless password, basically it can change anything. So it is a pretty vulnerable device and you want to change that. Now that would be about it for this shodan website, and with that we finish the most part of the footprinting. We just leave the two tools for the next lecture, which will be the dig and the DNS enum tools, which I will cover briefly, and after that we can continue on to the scanning section. So I hope I see you in the next lecture and take care. Hello everybody and welcome back, and this is the last part of the footprinting section where we will cover two tools which are basically almost the same, but there are slight differences between them. The first one, it is called dig, so if you just type here on your keyboard dig, you will notice that nothing will happen since we didn't specify any website. But for more information we will just type here dig -- help, which will provide us with the simple usage of this command. Now you can use any website for this. It is basically not illegal. This is just a tool in order to scan the DNS. Dig basically stands for Domain Internet Grouper, and with it you can basically try one of the attacks, which is called the zone transfer. Now the zone transfer, it uses the replication for primary and secondary DNS servers in order to be synchronized. Well, basically the secondary server, for example, asks for data for zone from primary server, and primary server answers with copy of database which has IP addresses and name of hosts. Now, the wrong configuration of the DNS can potentially allow anyone to request a zone transfer. So with this tool we will try out the zone transfer on some of the bigger websites, which of course won't work, but on the smaller ones it could possibly be a misconfiguration in the DNS so that the zone transfer is enabled. Now, zone transfer is happening over TCP on port 53 and not over UDP at the regular port of 53 for the DNS. So if you just type here diggoogle.com, you will notice that it will give us a bunch of the informations about the google.com. So for example, as we can see, this is the DNS query right here. The NS right here stands for name server, and if we can see that there are 4 of them. The A basically represents the IP address, the 1A stands for the IPv4 IP address, and 4A stands for the IPv6 IP address. We can see also some of the other options, which is the server that it used to query, which is our own router on port 53. As you can see, the usual DNS port will be port 53 over UDP, and my router IP address is 192.168.1.1. We can see that in one query we got one answer, authority 4, which is these 4 servers right here, and additional 9, I believe it is referring to this one right here, even though there is 8 ones. But these are basically the same servers, just with the different IP address. Not different IP address, different format of IP address. This one is, as I said, IPv4, and this one right here is IPv6 IP address. So that is the basic use of the dig command. You can use it to find out some of the information about the domain. But if you, for example, wanted to try out the zone transfer, you can do it like this, for example. So just type here dig, and then you type here AXLFR, which stands for the zone transfer. Now we can use, for example, facebook.com, and we can use the other server, for example, a.ns.facebook.com. And if we type this right here, you will notice that after a few seconds it will basically prompt us with the zone transfer failed, since the Facebook didn't misconfigure their DNS, so the zone transfer attack cannot be done on Facebook. Now there may be other smaller sites that could be possibly vulnerable to the zone transfer attack, but we won't be trying to find them at the moment. This is just one of the tools that you can use in order to find out if it is vulnerable. But let me just show you another tool right here, which is called DNS enum, which is also pre-installed in the Kali Linux. So basically it is the same as the dig tool. If we type right here DNS enum and google.com, it will provide us with similar information. As we can see, host's address google.com, which is A, stands for the IPv4, and then it will print us the IP address, the IPv4 address of google.com. And right here it is trying to find out some of the name servers of Google. As we saw before, there should be 4 of them. Now this might take a few seconds, and sometimes it actually just times out. It might time out right now, but we will see in a few seconds. I will come back when this finishes. As we can see, it finished right here, and it says that the google.com NS record query failed. It timed out, so we won't be trying that anymore. I just wanted to show you that you can use that tool as well if you want to. But that would be it for the footprinting section. So let us just recap what we covered. We covered some of the tools that we use to gather as much information as we can about our targets. So for example, these two we covered in order to gather some of the information from their server, for their DNS, and basically we also tried one of the attacks, which is the zone transfer, which of course didn't work on Facebook, but as I said, it might work on some of the other websites. And we also covered the Whois. We also covered the shodan website. We covered the harvester in this lecture, or in the previous lecture, where I showed you that it sometimes can actually work. So we gathered some of the emails from it. We also covered the Nikto, which is a big command tool. You should search more about it if you want to. It might be useful later on. So that would be about it for the footprinting section. And with this section we basically finish the beginner section, and we enter the intermediate section, where we will start off with creating our vulnerable virtual machine, which we will use in order to run our scans and attacks. Since it is not legal for us to attack a machine that we do not own, we will create a virtual machine which we can attack. Now you might have heard of that virtual machine is called Metasploitable, and I will show you in the next tutorial how to install it. And basically we will start covering one of the bigger tools in the Kali Linux, and one of the tools that you will use a lot, which is called the Nmap. But more about that in the scanning section, and I hope I will see you there. Take care.